Have you ever stopped mid-sentence and thought, wait, is this too much? You want to be honest, but suddenly you're second guessing everything. You don't want to give them ideas and you definitely don't want to overexpose them. If that's you, you're not alone. This is one of the most common fears I hear from parents. And here's what most parents don't realize. Age appropriate. It isn't really about what you say. It's about how you say it. You can explain a tampon, a sex toy, or even sexual intercourse to a young child if they've seen something or asked a question, and still keep the explanation simple, calm, and completely non sexual. But when you don't explain it, kids make up their own story, and that made up version is often way more confusing or scary than the truth. So, in this episode, I'm going to show you what age appropriate really means, how to adjust your language to suit your child's stage of development, and how to have those big conversations even when your child is still little. I've been helping families do this for over 25 years, and I promise you can be honest without going too far. You can protect their innocence without leaving them in the dark, because if kids are left confused, they don't always come back and ask again. And that's when they turn to Google or a friend or something way less safe. So stick around, because at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you a 1-minute challenge that'll help you explain anything in a way that your child can understand with zero awkwardness and zero oversharing. What if talking to your tween about sex didn't make you want to run for the hills? On Sex Ed for Tween Parents, we ditch the awkward and keep it real with chats that actually work. I'm Cath Hakanson, sex educator, mum, and your guide to handling all the tricky stuff without cringing or making it weird. Okay, let's be real. That panic when your child asks something that you weren't ready for, totally normal. And I've been there myself. Over the years, I've had to explain things to my kids that I never expected. A purple vibrator in the park, 2 people having sex in a tent, naked bodies on the street on New Year's Day, thanks inner city living. None of those conversations were planned, but they all had something in common. And that is, you don't choose the moment chooses you. No one wakes up thinking, today's the day I'm going to explain what a sex toy is. You don't choose these moments. Your child brings them to you because they've seen or heard something that doesn't make sense. They're not asking because they're sexual. They're asking because they're confused. And your job isn't to panic. It's to translate that moment into something they can understand. And what happens if you don't? If you aren't the one explaining it, giving them the answers, if you're not satisfying their curiosity, Google will do it for you, especially as they get older and they start typing their own information in. Because here's the thing, if your child doesn't get an answer from you, they'll find one from somewhere else, and it's usually the internet. How many times have you turned around to your kid and they've said, like, what times, when are we going shopping? And it's like, well, Google it and see what time they open. I don't know about you, but I, as a parent, often send my kids to the internet to find answers. So it's inevitable that when they're going to have questions about other things, that they're going to turn to the internet. And what that means is that they're likely to find porn if it's questions about anything to do with sex ed. They're going to find adult information, and they're going to find just questions and answers that are meant for adults and not for kids. And when that happens, what it does is it can leave them feeling confused, scared, or even ashamed just for being curious. So instead of avoiding the topic, it's about meeting them where they're at, because even if the topic is R-rated, your explanation doesn't have to be. So let's look at an R-rated topic or a PG explanation of how to talk about a sexual topic in a way that's kid-friendly. Think of it like this. You wouldn't explain pickleball to a 5-year-old the same way you'd explain it to a 15-year-old. You'd break it down. You'd use simple words. You'd leave out the complicated bits. And look, sex ed's no different. That's a vibrator. Some adults use it to feel good in their bodies. Or those people were doing something private in a public place, which isn't okay. That's it. Calm, simple, and factual. And if you're not sure what to say, that's why I've got a heap of those Q&A guides in the sex ed shop. And what it is examples of real questions from real kids with warm, straightforward, honest, and upfront answers that you can actually use. Now, what about their innocence? Look, this is a big fear, and it's something I often hear from parents, and it's a question I've had myself as a parent as well in regards to sex ed. But won't I destroy their innocence if I talk about this stuff too early? So the short answer is no, and the long answer is still no. I've had all the unexpected sex ed conversations with my kids because of where we live. We're in this inner city. I've got an adult sex toy shop a block away. But you know what? Even though I was having to talk to them about all this stuff, I haven't even told you the story yet about when there was a bad batch of drugs on the street and people were masturbating in public as we were walking to the supermarket to buy stuff. So my kids have been exposed to a lot in the inner city. But you know what? They were still innocent. They still played, they still used their imagination, and they felt safe in the world. So why was that? And it was because the conversations that I had helped them make sense of what they saw. So it didn't make them grow up faster. They just grew up informed. And that's what age appropriate sex ed is really about. It's not about avoiding words, it's about saying the right words in the right way for the right moment. Now, coming up, I've got a 1-minute challenge to help you do just that so that you can stop overthinking and just start explaining clearly. So, now that you know that age appropriate sex ed isn't about saying nothing, and it's about knowing how to respond when your child asks something expected. So now that you know that, you might still be thinking, what do I say when they ask about porn or sex toys or something that they saw at school? And that's why I've got a free guide for you. It's called it's a mouthful, the name, 5 cringe-free strategies to naturally start sex ed conversations. And inside you'll find 5 simple ways to start the conversation, even if they haven't asked yet. You'll also find some tips to stay calm and clear, even if the topic makes you squirm. And it's real-world strategies that build trust without saying too much too soon. Because when you start early and gently, you prevent confusion. You're also protecting their innocence with knowledge and understanding, and you're showing them that you're a safe place for them to turn. And if you ever get stuck for what to say, the Sex Ed Answer book in the Sex Ed shop, it is my most popular product, and it's packed with scripts and answers for hundreds of tricky questions from like what's a period to what's oral sex to pole dancing. And the answers are all age specific. So you can look up to see what would you say to a 3-year-old, what would you say to an 8-year-old. Now, back to the free guide though, you can grab a copy of it at cringe-free-strategies.com or tap the link below, because there'll be a link to it there somewhere, and try just one strategy tonight. And I promise it'll feel easier than you think. Now, here's your 1-minute challenge I've been promising. Ask yourself this, what has my tween already been exposed to through friends, school, or screens? Maybe it's a word they heard, a joke they laughed at but didn't quite get, a show they watched that had something in it. That question helps shift your focus from what you feel ready to say to what they actually need to hear, because often they're ready for more than we think. And when they've already seen or heard something, silence just doesn't protect them. Your calm, honest voice is what does the protecting. So, thanks so much for being here for this episode of Sex Ed for Tween Parents. If this helped you shift your thinking even just a little, I'd love it if you could leave a quick review. Helps other parents find the show and feel a lot less alone in this big sex ed thing. And don't forget that the free guide is at cringe-free-strategies.com, and it's got 5 simple strategies to help you start those conversations, or the links below. You've got this, and I'll see you in the next episode.